When it comes to my truth in motivation, I think about this media writing class I took in college. And every day you would walk in and there would be a prompt on the desk, 3-4 sentences, and you had to take that prompt and turn it into a full news story. And these prompts were based on real things that were happening in our world. Now, I walked in this one particular day. It's important to note that I was born and raised in Landlocked, Oklahoma. Okay, so I walk in and I read this prompt, and the prompt says that there's an unprecedented number of Portuguese men of war on the shore of Florida. And I had no idea that Portugal had invested this much in armed forces. But I understand why we had to write this story, because these innocent beachgoers were going to be attacked by international military men. And I read on with the prompt, and it said they're very hard to spot. They are almost impossible to spot. But you'll notice them because they shimmy out of the water. And I thought, what an interesting battle tactic to shimmy out of the water. The prompt also said that if you ran across a dead one on the beach, you should not touch it, and you should run and tell the authorities. And I thought, well, that's just good advice for anybody, but particularly our enemies. And the student beside me leaned over and she said, you know, my dad was bitten by one last summer. I said, they bite? I would have thought they had spears or guns, but I don't know what Portugal spends on their military. But I went on to write the most amazing thing I've ever written to this day. I was doing war correspondence as a freshman. And every time I think back on that story, and when I got my grade on that paper, I realized you can't convince anyone of anything. They're going to use every piece of evidence they have to further confirm what they already believe. And what a relief it is to know that we are not someone who has to educate or convince other people of anything unless they are reasonable and open to hearing it. My client Melanie was given a promotion at work, but she didn't like the package, and she wanted to decline the offer. So she called me up and said, can you review my decline letter? And the decline letter took me 4 minutes to read, because she was not only telling them how grateful she was and explaining to them why she wasn't taking this position, but she was also using this time to educate them on why this was a bad call and how they should really be thinking about promotions and how they should run and what they should pay. And I said, Melanie, we do not have to litigate our lives. We do not have to convince or educate people who are not asking to be educated or convinced. And in fact, you waste a lot of energy doing that. So please understand, you do not have to litigate your life. You do not have to always be acting like the evidence needs to be presented, because you cannot convince anyone of anything. My final truth happens to be around energy. And I think back to where I was when my latest book came out. And I had written this book solo for a couple of years, alone at my dining room table, with really nobody's input. But all of a sudden, when the book came out, there was a whole lot of interest in what was going to happen. The agent was concerned, the editors, the publisher, the bookstore, all of that, the cover art designer. All of a sudden, I had a lot of people very, very interested in what I was doing. And so they told me, this is how it has to be successful. This is how you have to do it. You have to go on this talk show. You have to go on these podcasts. You have to go on a whirlwind keynote tour. You've got to go to bookstores. You've got to write. You've got to do it. So you know what I did? I did it all. I did everything they asked me to do. And I was exhausted. And I didn't feel like it was particularly authentic to the way I actually operate. But I suddenly had all these people telling me what to do, and so I found myself holding a flashlight, running up and down a beach trying to flag down boats, when I had to realize a lighthouse doesn't chase boats. A lighthouse understands who they are and what they are, and is going to stand still and shine bright and remember who they are, and the boats that need to find them will find them. But there are times in my life, particularly with this hustle culture that I see, this hashtag hustle or women boss or whatever, where it seems to be about this idea that if I just exert a lot of energy, I just show that I'm always busy, I just show that I'm hustling, all that looks like to me is a woman getting her hair wet as she's running up and down the beach with a flashlight, rather than standing still and shining bright for all the boats to see. That does lead me, though, to what my lie still is. What lie I continue to tell myself, despite all this work I've done to improve the stories I tell. And this lie happens to be about my own self-perception. And so this lie that I'll share, then I want to hear yours, has to do with this idea that I am to blame. You would be surprised how ingrained this idea, this lie, is to me, and how deeply dangerous it is. And I'm aware of it, but I'm still battling it. The same plane that had the turbulence, as the passengers were getting on, I checked my ticket 4 or 5 or 6 times, as I think normal people do. And I got into my plane seat and I buckled up, and a woman came up and she said, "You're in my seat." And without a second, I unbuckled and stood up. And the man beside me stuck his hand out over me, this stranger, and said, "Let's check her ticket." And I reflect on this because, of course, she was wrong and I was right, but I immediately believed that I was wrong. In my work at OU, the most important revelation I had was about 3 or 4 years in. My department chair and I were on the phone, and she was telling me that there was a problem with one of the classes. And I don't even remember what I said, but I remember her sighing, and I remember feeling embarrassed. And she said, "Meg, I need you to know that you're not always to blame. I'm not calling you to tell you that this is a situation that's now your obligation. I'm calling to tell you about a problem, and it's not you to blame." So I want to pause for just a minute, and I want you, if you're willing and able, to stand up to the microphone and tell me, what is the lie that you tell yourself?